I'm kind of doing something a little different here. I wrote this story about 3 years ago of a camping or hiking experience I did, and anyway, I'm turning it into a video, and I'm going to read my story as I have a slideshow to the pictures I took because I didn't take any video at the time that I did the hike. So anyway, I hope it works out, and you can leave comments and probably be the only time I ever do anything like this, so it's going to be a little bit different. So anyway, here it goes. I'll start off with reading this opening paragraph. Now, granted, I wrote this 3 years ago, so the time frame may not be correct. A couple weeks ago, I started a hike I thought I could never do, especially when I'm about to turn 61. After almost a year of planning, exercise, walking, and getting ready, I was finally being shuttled to the south side of Mount Adams in Washington State. I've never hiked more than a few miles at a time, and I've only slept in a few times in a tent that I packed on my back. Most of my camping experience was from a car, and most of my hiking has been day hikes for short distances. What I was starting was a section hike on the PCT, the Pacific Crest Trail. The original plan was to hike about 100 miles in 2 weeks. Then it got scaled down to 70 miles in 9 days. We ended up doing about 45 miles in 4 days. My hiking partner and expedition leader was my sister-in-law, Betsy. She had recently been hiking the PCT in California and had hiked several hundred miles. I was following her blog post and made the mistake of saying how I enjoyed reading about her adventure and seeing the pictures. And I said I could never do something like that myself. Well, she corrected me on that last statement and said, yes, you can, and if you want, I can help you. So here we are, day one, on a section hike, dipping my toes in the water of hiking. I hoisted my 30-plus pound pack on my back and grabbed my hiking poles and headed up the hill from a place called South Climb Trailhead. One little step at a time. We were at about 6,000 feet elevation, and the air was a lot thinner than I was accustomed to at sea level. Betsy was a couple hundred feet ahead of me in no time. I started taking breaks to catch my breath, but just little breaks so I could not fall too far behind. Little steps and little breaks. I can do this. I finally made it up that first hill. I was told it was only a 700-foot elevation gain. That doesn't sound like a lot, really, when we were in the shadow of Mount Adams, but it was such a relief when the trail leveled off a little and my air brakes got to be fewer and further apart. That first day I hiked about 8 miles and it felt like it was mostly uphill, but I know it wasn't. We made it to our campsite and my feet and legs didn't really hurt. I was tired, but no issues. We set up our tents and made some dinner, took some pictures, and went to bed before the sun went down. The scenery that day was so amazing on the trail with all the wildflowers and the views of the mountain. Most of our hikes was in the alpine area above the tree line, or at least most of the trees. When I closed my eyes, I could relive all the beauty I saw that day as I fell asleep. I woke up once during the night as nature called, so I had to leave the security and comfort of my tent. When I stepped outside, I was amazed with what I saw. I can't remember ever seeing so many stars in the sky in all my life. As Carl Sagan used to say, billions and billions. I tried to take a couple pictures, but my camera, or maybe my ability, was not sufficient, so none of the pictures captured the beauty of the mountain with all the stars. When I woke up in the morning for day 2 on the trail, nothing hurt. I was shocked. I thought for sure I would be stiff and sore and it would take some time before I would be able to carry that 30-pound pack up and down those hills again. After we broke camp and got things packed up, I was on my way, one step at a time. I had no idea how many miles we would go, as I just trusted Betsy to figure these things out. We ended up doing 9 miles. We started crossing more streams and even the headwaters to the Lewis River. It was sizable, even that high on the mountain. With the help of a few rocks and logs in the right places, we were able to cross without getting wet. The PCT is a well-defined trail, but it is not a stroll in the park. We crossed streams and rivers, the lava fields, trees, and roots, all while carrying everything we would need to provide shelter, food, and water for ourselves for the next few days. At the end of the second day, I was tired, and my feet and legs are still good. We stopped for the night at this beautiful waterfall, and there were other campers and hikers already with tents set up. The campsite at the base of the waterfall was open, so we set up our tents there. I took my shoes and socks off and tried to soak my feet in the stream, but it was so cold I could only keep them in the water for about 30 seconds. It still felt good. Betsy informed me that on day 4 we would have to do another 9-mile day just like today, but we would have a 2,000-foot elevation gain. She asked if I think I could do it. After the last couple days, I was feeling pretty good, but my limitations were becoming apparent and my frequent breathers on the hills. I was thinking about that first hill on the first day. Could I do that hill 3 times? I put it back to her and said, "What do you think?" She said she didn't think it would be a good idea. I agreed reluctantly. I felt like I had let her down, but more, I felt like I let myself down. I'm not a person to admit I can't do something easily. I would rather fail trying to say I can't than to say I can't do something. But in this circumstance, failure was not a good option. Plan B. I don't know we had a plan B, and neither did Betsy. After we decided the 2,000-foot hill wasn't a good plan, she broke out the maps and decided we could hike a section further south from where we started. Betsy's husband, Dave, met us after day 3, and instead of resupplying us with more food, he gave us a ride to a location about 30 miles south where the elevation was around 4,000 feet. So I had more air to breathe, and I was told the hills are less severe. The plan was to hike about 20 miles in 4 days. That seemed kind of slow to me, but I wasn't leading this expedition, so I didn't question it. It was getting late in the day, and we already had many miles behind us, so when Dave dropped us off, we headed out to find a place to pitch the tents. We found a suitable campsite in about half a mile to spend the night. Day 4. I woke up to the sweet voice saying, "Chris, it's time to get up." It sounded like a dream at first, as I usually wake up on my own or by a very loud alarm. It was 5:30 a.m., and we decided to hike before breakfast to see if we can get someplace to watch the solar eclipse. We got things packed up and hit the trail in record time. By 10 a.m. we had made 8 miles, and we found a nice lake with a beach to have some breakfast and coffee and watch the solar eclipse. We didn't have the special eclipse glasses, so we didn't notice much when it was happening. We hit the trail, and by noon we had put another 2 miles behind us. Noon and 10 miles. My legs still felt as good as they did first thing in the morning, and my feet were just as fresh. We were approaching our campsite for the night. Now I'm thinking to myself, we will be sitting next to this beautiful lake that is probably the largest breeding site for mosquitoes for miles around, for hours on end, waiting to go to sleep, so we can get up and hike the next day. I thought, why don't we just keep hiking? So I asked, how far is it to hike the whole trail today? Betsy again broke out the maps and added it up and said it would be another 7 or 8 miles. I said, let's do it. I was thinking it would be nice to have accomplished one big mile day. Bragging rights, I guess. So I was warned once we start, there are no places to camp, so we would have to hike the whole distance. Betsy also added, there is this little hill. Then it's all downhill after that. I learned when Betsy says something is a little hill that it really is not little at all. That little hill was Berry Mountain. Yes, it's a named mountain on the map, so I was back to taking my breathers all the way up, but not as many since we are at a lower elevation. I got that little hill behind me, and it wasn't all downhill, but the majority was, and we made it out before 5 p.m. The total miles were 17.72 miles in one day, carrying a 30-pound pack. I was very tired, but felt proud to have hiked that distance in one day. Looking back, I wish we had continued with our first plan of going over Goat Rocks. I know the 2,000-foot hill would have been hard, but it would have been worth it. I have read many articles and watched a lot of videos about the Goat Rocks section. I want to do it so badly, but I'm still hesitant. It's on my bucket list, but I'm starting to have my doubts I will ever accomplish it as I'm getting older. Dave was waiting for us at the end of the day and gave us a ride back to their house. We cleaned up and went out to dinner. I am so grateful Betsy took me under her wing and convinced me I could do some hiking too, even at my age. I got to experience the beauty of this area and the satisfaction of being a section hiker on the PCT. I'm sure I will remember this hike for the rest of my life.